gospel, the good news of Jesus. Please join me in singing the gospel acclamation.
The Lord be with you. And with your spirit. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. At that time, Jesus came to Jericho and intended to pass through the town. Now a man there named Zacchaeus, who was a chief tax collector and also a wealthy man, was seeking to see who Jesus was. But he could not see him because of the crowd, for he was short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree in order to see Jesus, who was about to pass that way. When he reached the place, Jesus looked up and said, "Zacchaeus, come down quickly, for today I must stay at your house." And he came down quickly and received him with joy. When they all saw this, they began to grumble, saying, "He has gone to stay at the house of a sinner." But Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Behold, half of my possessions, Lord, I shall give to the poor. And if I have extorted anything from anyone, I shall repay it 4 times over." And Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a descendant of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save what was lost." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Sometimes when I am reading the Holy Gospel and reflecting upon it, trying to make applications to my own life, I come up with a title for the particular passage so that I can remember part of my reflection in the future. And when I was reading this gospel passage, I thought to myself, if I was producing a movie about Zacchaeus, what would I put up on the marquee? And I came up with 2 titles. One would be Little Guy Meets Big Guy. Another might be From a Taker to a Giver. Now here's the storyline for the movie. Zacchaeus lived in a town named Jericho, and he was the chief tax collector, not to be confused with just a normal tax collector. As the chief tax collector, he worked for the establishment, for Rome. And because he was the chief tax collector, he could charge whatever he chose for the tax rate, 5%, 10%, or even more. So he was ripping people off, as we would say today. Definitely, he became rich doing this. And I would suspect that the people of the town looked at him as a man who had it all. More money than he could even count. All kinds of power and prestige. And if you can charge whatever you want for the tax, that's a lot of power to have. And I would guess also that the persons in the town didn't like him all that much because he was bleeding them dry. A person who had it all. That's how they looked upon him. And I guess that if we believed as they did, that if you have all the money you need and a lot of power and prestige, that can buy you happiness and good health, then I guess he did have it all. But I don't think he had it all. I think there was something missing in his life. He looked at himself, and he had all kinds of money, but he knew that he was missing purpose and meaning in his life. He was missing direction. And over many years, he used to take that money and try to stuff it in that hole in the deepest part of his heart. But I guess what was happening is the money was falling out of the bottom. He wasn't happy. And I get that, because I have been there, and I would suspect that most of you have been too. You know, those times in our life when we kind of step back, it happens periodically, and we survey our own kingdom, the kingdom that we have put together over many years. And we realize that we have everything that we need, and probably more than we need. And if we don't have everything that we need, we have enough resources to go buy it. Don't even think about it. But we too realize that money and possessions don't buy us happiness, and as soon as we are diagnosed with some terrible illness, we realize that this does not give us good health either. So what would cause Zacchaeus to go out of his way, to find his way where Jesus was going to be passing by, and to climb up into a tree to wait for Jesus? He was looking for someone, something, to fill that hole in the deepest recesses of his own heart. And here's what happened, as we hear in the Holy Gospel. Jesus came by, and somehow they connected. And Jesus saw him in the tree, and he used that famous phrase from Let's Make a Deal. You watch that show in the mornings? He said, Zacchaeus, come on down. I'm coming to your house today. I'm coming to your heart today. And Zacchaeus had an absolute conversion, a metanoia, a turning around to face Jesus. Whereas for so many years, he had had his back to the one and the only one who can give us meaning and purpose in our lives. And the gospel goes on to say that Zacchaeus had such a conversion that he gave half of his possessions to the poor and repaid fourfold anyone from whom he had taken money that he didn't deserve. So the question is, how far will each of us go? What sacrifices are we willing to make? To accept Jesus into our hearts? To allow him to change us? Are we willing to move away from that bad habit that perhaps we have developed that is keeping up a wall between us and the Lord? Are we willing to move away from those friends who kind of encourage us to go along with them and gossip and backbite other people when they are not present in the group? Are we willing to climb out of the tree of indifference and apathy that we have been watering for so much of our lives? And when Jesus chooses to come, after we spread our arms and call to him to come to our house, to our heart, are we going to recognize him when he comes? Will we see him in the homeless man that we pass in downtown Troy, or now, just before we go over the Menands Bridge? Will we see him in our great aunt, who is kind of a miserable person, but is very lonely, and we avoid visiting? Will we see Jesus when we call to him and say, Jesus, come to me. Because we often pray that famous prayer, Lord, I'm doing pretty good today. I haven't complained about anything. I haven't griped about anyone. I haven't been selfish. I haven't gossiped. But pretty soon, Lord, I'm going to get out of bed. And then I'm going to need your help. So once again, will we recognize him when he comes into our lives? And will we be able to say, Jesus, I hear you knocking. I've been waiting for you. Come on down and visit my heart.